Ladies and gentlemen, 1. Own less, live more. We chase possessions as if they will bring fulfillment. But how often does ownership become a burden? Let go of what does not serve you. The fewer things you own, the fewer things own you. 2. Cut the mental clutter. Your mind is a garden, weed it often. Let go of thoughts that lead no worries about the past, anxieties about the future, or endless comparisons with others. Focus only on what is within your control. 3. Simplify your commitments. Your time is the most precious resource you have. Stop saying yes to everything. Every unnecessary obligation steals your focus and energy. Prioritize what truly matters and let go of the rest. 4. Embrace silence and solitude. The world is loud, always demanding your attention. But clarity is found in stillness. Make time for silence. In solitude, you will hear your own thoughts clearly and rediscover what is essential. 5. Let go of toxic people. Not everyone deserves a place in your life. Some people drain you, distract you, or pull you into negativity. Walk away from those who do not uplift you. It is not cruelty, it is self-respect. 6. Master the art of saying no. A life filled with obligations is not a life, it is a schedule. If something does not align with your values, decline it. Every no to the unimportant is a yes to what truly matters. 7. Stop seeking approval. You cannot control what others think, nor should you try. Live by your own principles. Seek to be virtuous, not popular. True freedom comes when you are no longer enslaved by the opinions of others. Live with purpose. A cluttered life is a directionless one. Define your purpose and let it guide your decisions. When you know what truly matters, everything else fades into insignificance. Conclusion: the freedom of less. My friends, decluttering is not just about tidying up, it is about liberation. It is about making space for what is truly important. It is about removing distractions so that we may focus on wisdom, virtue, and inner peace. We live in a world that glorifies accumulation. From the moment we are old enough to understand desire, we are taught that more is better: more possessions, more wealth, more achievements. We are bombarded with advertisements that tell us happiness is just one purchase away. We are conditioned to believe that the size of our home, the brand of our car, and the number of things we own are reflections of our success. And so, we chase, we collect, we fill our homes, our schedules, and our minds with things we believe will bring us fulfillment. But if this were true, why are so many people drowning in stress and dissatisfaction despite having more than ever before? Why do we feel weighed down, restless and exhausted when we have more clothes than we can wear, more gadgets than we can use, and more commitments than we can handle? The truth is, the pursuit of more does not lead to happiness, it leads to burden. To truly live, we must let go, not just of physical possessions, but of the mindset that equates ownership with fulfillment. When we release ourselves from the grip of material excess, we create space not just in our homes, but in our lives. We begin to see that true wealth is not in what we own, but in the freedom to live unburdened. Consider how much time and energy we dedicate to the things we own. We work long hours to afford them. We clean them, organize them, insure them, maintain them, repair them, and eventually replace them. The more we acquire, the more we must manage. Every object in our possession demands attention, even if only a small part of it. Over time, our belongings begin to own us more than we own them. We become trapped in an endless cycle, buying, maintaining, and replacing while losing sight of what actually brings joy and fulfillment. This is why simplicity is a form of liberation. When we own less, we reclaim our time. We no longer waste hours managing clutter or worrying about material possessions. Our space becomes clear, and so does our mind. We find peace in the absence of excess. We begin to appreciate what we have rather than constantly longing for what we don't. Living with less also sharpens our focus on what truly matters. Think about the objects you hold on to. How many of them serve a real purpose? How many bring you deep, lasting joy? And how many simply take up space, adding nothing to your life but clutter and obligation? When we let go of the non-essential, we create room for what truly enriches us: experiences, relationships, self-discovery, and personal growth. Some fear that owning less means deprivation. But the opposite is true. When we stop accumulating things we do not need, we begin to experience life more fully. A cluttered home reflects a cluttered mind. When we simplify our surroundings, our thoughts become clearer, our actions more intentional. We stop chasing the temporary high of consumption and start embracing the deep satisfaction of presence. Think about a moment when you traveled with only a small bag, carrying just the essentials. Didn't you feel lighter, freer? Unburdened by excess, you were able to focus on the experience rather than the things you brought along. Now imagine bringing that same sense of freedom into your daily life, not just on vacation but every day. That is the power of owning less. When we declutter our physical space, we also decluttered our emotional space. How often do we hold on to things not because we need them, but because of sentimentality or fear? We keep clothes we no longer wear, books we will never read, and gifts we feel guilty discarding. But our attachment to material things can often weigh us down emotionally. Letting go is not just an act of tidying up, it is an act of releasing the past and making room for the future. By owning less, we also gain financial freedom. We stop spending money on things we do not need. We stop chasing trends that fade. We stop defining our worth by external possessions. And in doing so, we gain control over our lives rather than allowing consumer culture to dictate our happiness. With fewer financial burdens, we have more options, perhaps the freedom to work less, travel more, or invest in experiences that truly enrich us. The beauty of simplicity is that it allows us to find joy in the little things. A quiet morning with a book, a walk without distraction, a meaningful conversation. When we are not preoccupied with acquiring more, we learn to appreciate what is already in front of us. Owning less is not about sacrifice, it is about choosing what truly adds value to our lives. It is about removing the noise, the excess, and the distractions so we can focus on what matters most. In the end, life is not measured by how much we own, but by how deeply we live. And true living begins when we free ourselves from the weight of unnecessary possessions and embrace the richness of simplicity. Our minds are constantly under siege. Information floods our screens, distractions pull us in 1,000 directions, and worries creep into even the quietest moments. We live in a world that thrives on mental clutter, endless notifications, never-ending to-do lists, and a constant stream of comparison that keeps us feeling like we are always one step behind. This mental noise is not harmless, it steals our focus, drains our energy, and leaves us feeling overwhelmed. We may not see it in the same way we see a cluttered desk or a messy home, but the weight of an overcrowded mind is just as suffocating. To regain clarity, we must learn to cut the mental clutter and reclaim our inner space. Much of the mental clutter we carry comes from worrying about things beyond our control. We replay past mistakes, obsess over how others perceive us, or fret about the future. But worry changes nothing. It does not undo the past or guarantee a better future. It only robs the present of peace. The key to clearing this kind of mental clutter is recognizing the simple truth that some things are within our control, and others are not. The energy we waste agonizing over things we cannot change would be far better spent on the things we can influence. When we focus only on what is within our power, our minds become lighter, clearer, and more productive. Another source of mental clutter is the overwhelming amount of information we consume. We check our phones before getting out of bed, scroll through endless news feeds, and absorb opinions from all directions. Our brains were never meant to process this much input. The more information we take in, the harder it becomes to hear our own thoughts. We mistake being informed for being productive, but in reality we are simply overloading ourselves. The solution is not to know everything, but to filter what truly matters. Not every piece of news deserves our attention. Not every opinion needs to be considered. By choosing carefully what we consume, we create space for deeper thinking, reflection, and true understanding. Mental clutter also comes in the form of distractions. We tell ourselves that multitasking makes us efficient, yet we rarely accomplish anything of depth when our attention is divided. Our focus is shattered by emails, notifications, and the habit of jumping from one task to another. Instead of moving forward, we feel stuck in a loop of half-finished tasks and endless interruptions. The ability to concentrate on one thing at a time is a lost art, but it is also the path to clarity. When we remove distractions and dedicate our full attention to the task at hand, We not only work more effectively but also experience a deeper sense of engagement and satisfaction. Beyond external distractions, we must also confront the internal chatter that clutters our minds. Our thoughts race with self-doubt, insecurities, and imagined scenarios that never come to pass. We create stories about ourselves, stories of inadequacy, failure, and fear. These mental loops keep us stuck, preventing us from moving forward with confidence. The truth is, most of these thoughts are just noise. They are not reality, but rather narratives we have built over time. When we step back and observe our thoughts without attaching to them, we realize that we are not defined by every passing worry or insecurity. We can choose which thoughts deserve our attention and which should be dismissed. Expectations both from society and ourselves also contribute to mental clutter. We place unnecessary pressure on ourselves to be constantly achieving, improving, and proving our worth. We compare our lives to those of others, measuring our success against unrealistic standards. But this comparison game is endless and unwinnable. No matter how much we achieve, there will always be someone ahead. The more we chase external validation, the more mentally exhausted we become. The solution is not to do more, but to redefine what truly matters. By letting go of unrealistic expectations and focusing on personal fulfillment rather than external validation, we free ourselves from a mental burden that serves no real purpose. Another common cause of mental clutter is unresolved emotions. We carry guilt from the past, resentment toward others, and fears about the future. These emotions take up mental space, clouding our judgment and affecting our well-being. Yet we often avoid confronting them, believing that pushing them aside will make them disappear. But emotions do not simply vanish, they linger, influencing our actions and thoughts in ways we do not even realize. The only way to clear this form of clutter is to face it head-on. Acknowledge the emotions, process them, and then let them go. Whether through journaling, reflection, or conversation, addressing what weighs on our minds allows us to release it and move forward with greater clarity. Cutting mental clutter does not mean emptying the mind entirely. It means making space for what truly matters. It is about decluttering unnecessary worries, filtering out distractions, and focusing on thoughts that serve us rather than hinder us. When we reduce mental noise, we find ourselves thinking more clearly, acting with greater purpose, and experiencing a deeper sense of peace. A decluttered mind is a powerful mind, one that is free to focus, create, and truly live. Life today is filled with endless demands. There are commitments to work, family, friends, social obligations, personal projects, and countless other responsibilities that seem to grow by the day. We say yes to things we do not have time for, we take on obligations that drain our energy, and we stretch ourselves thin trying to meet the expectations of others. In doing so, we lose control of our own time and find ourselves overwhelmed, exhausted, and unable to focus on what truly matters. The key to reclaiming our lives is simplifying our commitments, not by doing more, but by doing less with greater intention. We often agree to things out of habit, guilt, or fear of disappointing others. We commit to activities that do not bring us joy, meetings that add little value, and obligations that do not align with our priorities. But every commitment we make carries a cost. Time is the most finite resource we have. Once spent, it can never be reclaimed. Every yes to one thing is a no to something else. If we do not choose our commitments carefully, we find ourselves constantly busy but rarely fulfilled. We mistake movement for progress and activity for accomplishment. The result is a life dictated by obligations rather than intention. One of the greatest challenges in simplifying commitments is learning to say no. Many of us feel obligated to accept every request that comes our way, whether it is an extra project at work, a social gathering, or a favor for a friend. We fear that saying no will make us seem selfish or unhelpful, but in reality, declining commitments that do not serve us is not selfish, it is necessary. When we say no to things that drain our energy or pull us away from our priorities, we create space for what truly matters. Saying no does not mean rejecting people. It means setting boundaries that allow us to live with greater clarity and purpose. Another source of unnecessary commitments is the pressure to be constantly busy. Society glorifies productivity, making us believe that our worth is tied to how much we accomplish. We fill our schedules with back-to-back meetings, endless tasks, and obligations that leave no room for rest or reflection. But being constantly occupied does not mean we are making meaningful progress. True productivity comes not from doing more, but from doing the right things with focus and intention. When we simplify our commitments, we shift from being busy to being effective. We stop trying to do everything, and instead focus on what truly moves us forward. Relationships also play a significant role in the commitments we take on. We often feel obligated to maintain social ties out of habit rather than genuine connection. We attend gatherings that do not bring us joy, keep in touch with people who drain our energy, and agree to plans that we do not truly want to be part of. But our time is precious, and how we spend it should reflect our values. When we simplify our social commitments, we make space for the relationships that truly matter. We invest in deeper, more meaningful connections rather than scattering our attention across countless shallow interactions. Work commitments are another major source of complexity. Many of us take on more than we need to, driven by a desire to prove ourselves or avoid disappointing others. We volunteer for extra responsibilities, stay late to complete unnecessary tasks, and stretch ourselves beyond our limits. But overcommitment at work does not lead to better performance, it leads to burnout. Simplifying professional commitments means recognizing what is truly essential and focusing our efforts there. It means setting boundaries, delegating when possible, and understanding that doing fewer things well is far more valuable than doing many things poorly. One of the most overlooked commitments we make is to our own personal goals and aspirations. In the rush to fulfill obligations to others, we often neglect the promises we have made to ourselves. Whether it is a creative pursuit, a fitness goal, or simply the need for rest, these personal commitments are just as important as external ones. Simplifying commitments is not just about removing what does not matter, it is about making room for what does. When we clear the unnecessary from our lives, we regain the time and energy to focus on our own growth, well-being, and fulfillment. At its core, simplifying commitments is about intentionality. It is about choosing what truly deserves our time and letting go of the rest. It is about understanding that we cannot do everything, nor should we try. When we simplify our commitments, we free ourselves from the weight of unnecessary obligations and create a life that is more focused, fulfilling, and aligned with what truly matters. Silence and solitude are rare in today's world. Noise surrounds us from the moment we wake up, and distractions fill every spare moment. We are constantly bombarded with notifications, conversations, and the endless stream of digital content demanding our attention. Even when we are alone, we rarely allow ourselves to truly be with our own thoughts. The world teaches us that to be busy is to be productive and that to be constantly engaged is to be successful. But in this endless cycle of noise and distraction, we lose something essential: the ability to listen to ourselves, to reflect deeply, and to find clarity in the stillness. Silence is not just the absence of noise, it is the presence of awareness. When we allow ourselves to step away from distractions and sit in true silence, we begin to notice things that were previously drowned out: the subtle rhythms of our breath, the quiet workings of our mind, the emotions we have pushed aside in the rush of daily life. In silence, we confront ourselves in a way that is impossible when we are constantly surrounded by stimulation. This confrontation can be uncomfortable at first, but it is also deeply necessary. Without silence, we never truly hear ourselves. Without solitude, we never fully understand who we are beyond the roles we play in the world. Many people fear silence because it forces them to face what they have been avoiding. When there is no external noise to distract us, the inner noise becomes more apparent. Unresolved emotions, buried fears, and lingering doubts rise to the surface. But rather than being something to fear, this is an opportunity, a chance to acknowledge and work through the things that weigh on our minds. Silence creates the space for clarity, and clarity allows us to move forward with a greater sense of purpose and peace. Solitude, much like silence, is often misunderstood. In a society that values constant social interaction, being alone is sometimes seen as a sign of loneliness or isolation. But solitude is not loneliness, it is a conscious choice to step away from the noise of the world and reconnect with ourselves. It is in solitude that some of the greatest ideas are born, where creativity flourishes, and where true self-awareness develops. When we are alone, we are free from the expectations and judgments of others. We can think without influence, reflect without interruption, and simply exist without the need to perform or please. Throughout history, great thinkers, writers, and leaders have sought solitude as a means of deep reflection and insight. They understood that wisdom is often found in stillness. It is in moments of solitude that we can process our experiences, gain perspective on our challenges, and cultivate inner strength. The ability to be alone with one's thoughts is a sign of a strong and centered mind. When we embrace solitude, we learn to rely on ourselves for clarity, rather than seeking constant validation or distraction from the outside world. In modern life, silence and solitude have become luxuries. We fill every gap in our day with noise, checking our phones while waiting in line, playing music or podcasts during any moment of stillness, and scrolling through screens until the very second we fall asleep. This constant input leaves no room for reflection. Without quiet moments, our thoughts remain scattered, and we move through life reactively rather than intentionally. But when we deliberately create space for silence and solitude, we begin to notice a shift. Our thoughts become clearer, our minds less restless, and our ability to focus improves. One of the most powerful benefits of embracing silence is the ability to listen not just to others, but to ourselves. When we practice silence, we become more attuned to the thoughts and emotions that usually get lost in the noise. We start to recognize patterns in our thinking, identify what truly matters, and let go of unnecessary mental clutter. In this space of stillness, we also become better listeners to others. We learn to be present in conversations, to hear what is truly being said, and to respond with greater thoughtfulness rather than reacting impulsively. Solitude, too, strengthens our sense of self. When we are comfortable being alone, we become less dependent on external validation. We no longer seek distractions to fill the void, because we realize there is no void, only space that we can choose to fill with meaningful reflection, creativity, or rest. The more time we spend in solitude, the more we understand our own thoughts, desires, and purpose. We become grounded, less easily swayed by outside influences, and more confident in our own decisions. The modern world may not encourage silence and solitude, but that makes them even more valuable. They are forms of rebellion against the culture of distraction, a way to reclaim our minds from the chaos. When we create moments of silence in our daily lives, whether through meditation, a quiet walk, or simply sitting without distractions, we give ourselves the gift of presence. When we seek solitude, even for a short while, we grant ourselves the space to think, feel, and be without interference. These simple yet powerful practices can transform the way we experience life, bringing clarity, peace, and a deeper understanding of ourselves. Letting go of toxic people is one of the most important steps toward achieving peace, clarity, and self-growth. The relationships we keep shape our mental and emotional well-being, influencing our thoughts, decisions, and overall outlook on life. While healthy relationships uplift us, toxic ones drain our energy, fill our minds with negativity, and prevent us from becoming the best versions of ourselves. Yet, despite knowing this, many people struggle to walk away from harmful relationships. Whether out of guilt, obligation, or fear of being alone, they continue to allow toxic individuals to occupy space in their lives. But true freedom comes when we recognize that not all relationships are meant to last, and that letting go of toxic people is an act of self-respect, not cruelty. Toxic people come in many forms. Some are manipulative, using guilt or control to keep others under their influence. Others are perpetually negative, always complaining or spreading pessimism, making it difficult to maintain a positive mindset. Some are jealous and unsupportive, subtly undermining others rather than celebrating their successes. Then there are those who drain emotional energy, constantly demanding attention, bringing drama into every situation, or expecting others to carry their burdens while offering nothing in return. Regardless of their specific behaviors, all toxic individuals have one thing in common: they take more than they give, leaving those around them feeling exhausted, anxious, or diminished. One of the biggest barriers to letting go of toxic people is the emotional attachment that has already been formed. Many toxic relationships, whether romantic, familial, or friendships, have moments of warmth and connection that make it difficult to see the harm they cause. This is especially true in long-standing relationships, where history and shared experiences create a sense of loyalty. However, a relationship's longevity does not justify its continuation if it brings more harm than good. The past should not hold more weight than the present reality. If a relationship is built on manipulation, disrespect, or constant negativity, no amount of history can make it healthy. Guilt is another major factor that keeps people tied to toxic relationships. Many feel responsible for the well-being of others, believing that they must endure toxicity to avoid hurting someone's feelings. This is especially common in family relationships, where the expectation to maintain bonds regardless of toxicity is deeply ingrained. However, allowing guilt to dictate choices leads to self-sacrifice at the expense of mental and emotional health. No one is obligated to maintain relationships that cause suffering. Choosing to distance oneself from toxicity is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of self-care. Protecting personal peace and well-being should always take priority over preserving relationships that do not serve a positive purpose. Fear of loneliness also prevents many from walking away from toxic people. The thought of being alone can be intimidating, leading people to tolerate harmful relationships rather than face solitude. However, being alone is far better than being in relationships that bring pain, anxiety, or self-doubt. Loneliness is temporary, but the damage caused by toxic relationships can have long-term effects on self-esteem, confidence, and mental health. Walking away from toxicity creates space for healthier relationships to enter. It allows for personal growth, self-reflection, and the opportunity to build connections with people who truly support and uplift. Letting go of toxic people does not always mean cutting them off completely. In some cases, especially with family or co-workers, complete separation is not feasible. However, it is possible to set clear boundaries to protect emotional well-being. Boundaries act as a safeguard against toxicity, allowing for interaction without allowing the negative influence to take hold. This may mean limiting conversations, refusing to engage in toxic behavior, or simply choosing not to be emotionally invested in their actions or opinions. Setting firm boundaries is a way of reclaiming control over personal energy and ensuring that toxic individuals do not dictate emotional states. Another important aspect of letting go is understanding that it is not about seeking revenge or proving a point. The goal is not to make toxic individuals realize their flaws or to force them to change. That is beyond anyone's control. True closure comes not from confrontation, but from acceptance, the acceptance that some people will not change, that not every relationship is meant to last, and that prioritizing self-respect is not selfish but necessary. Walking away is not an admission of defeat, but a declaration of self-worth. It is a conscious choice to remove negativity and make room for healthier, more fulfilling relationships. The process of letting go is not always easy, and emotions of sadness, anger, or guilt may arise. However, these emotions are temporary. In time, the space left by toxic individuals will be filled with peace, clarity, and healthier connections. The absence of negativity makes room for personal growth, self-love, and deeper relationships with those who genuinely bring positivity and support. No one should feel obligated to keep toxic people in their life. Walking away is not abandonment. It is a step toward a life that is lighter, freer, and filled with people who truly matter. Saying no is one of the most powerful skills a person can develop, yet it is one of the most difficult to master. Many people struggle with it, feeling obligated to agree to requests out of guilt, fear of disappointing others, or a desire to maintain harmony. The inability to say no often leads to stress, exhaustion, and a life filled with commitments that do not align with one's true priorities. Mastering the art of saying no is not about being selfish or inconsiderate. It is about setting boundaries, protecting personal time and energy, and living with greater intention. One of the biggest reasons people find it hard to say no is the fear of rejection or judgment. Society teaches that being agreeable and accommodating is a virtue, and many people internalize the idea that saying no makes them difficult, rude, or unkind. However, constantly saying yes to others often means saying no to oneself. Every commitment requires time, energy, and attention resources that are limited. When too many demands are accepted, burnout becomes inevitable, and resentment can build toward the very people who were originally helped. Learning to say no is essential for maintaining balance, avoiding unnecessary stress, and ensuring that time is spent on what truly matters. Many people also struggle to say no because of a deep-seated desire to be liked. Humans are social creatures, and approval from others can feel reassuring. However, constantly seeking validation through agreement is a path to exhaustion. True respect is not earned by always saying yes, but by being honest about one's limits. Those who respect and care about others will understand when boundaries are set. Those who react negatively to a polite and reasonable no may not have had genuine respect in the first place. The need to be liked should never come at the cost of one's own well-being. Another challenge in saying no is the fear of missing out. Opportunities, invitations, and requests come in many forms, and it can be tempting to accept everything to avoid regret. But saying yes to everything leads to being overwhelmed, and in the end, quality suffers. It is better to give full attention to a few meaningful commitments than to spread oneself too thin. Saying no to the unimportant makes space for what is truly valuable. Life becomes richer when time is spent intentionally rather than reactively. One of the most effective ways to master saying no is to recognize that it does not require an explanation or apology. Many people over-explain or justify their decision in an attempt to soften the refusal. While it is natural to want to be polite, excessive explanations often weaken the response and invite negotiation. A simple, direct and respectful no is enough. Phrases like "I appreciate the offer, but I have to decline," or "I won't be able to commit to that," are both firm and courteous. There is no need to provide excuses or elaborate reasons. Clarity and confidence are key. For those who struggle with guilt when saying no, reframing the situation can be helpful. Instead of viewing it as letting someone down, it can be seen as prioritizing personal well-being. Just as no one expects a person to lend all their money to others at the expense of their own needs, the same should apply to time and energy. Everyone has limits, and respecting those limits is not selfish, it is necessary. Additionally, saying no to one request does not mean rejecting the person entirely. It simply means setting a boundary in that specific situation. Practicing saying no in small ways can build confidence over time. Starting with low-stakes situations, such as declining a minor request or a casual invitation, helps reinforce the ability to set boundaries. Over time, it becomes easier to assertively decline larger commitments without guilt or hesitation. The more often no is used when necessary, the more natural it becomes. It is also important to recognize that saying no is not about being harsh or unkind. Delivery matters. A firm yet polite tone ensures that the message is clear without being confrontational. Expressing gratitude for the opportunity before declining can help maintain positive relationships. For instance, instead of bluntly rejecting an invitation, one could say, "I really appreciate the invite, but I won't be able to make it." This approach acknowledges the request while still setting a clear boundary. Mastering the art of saying no ultimately leads to greater freedom. It allows for more control over time and energy, ensuring that commitments align with personal values and priorities. It reduces stress, prevents burnout, and fosters a sense of empowerment. When no is used appropriately, life becomes more intentional, and relationships become more authentic. People who truly respect and care will understand, and those who do not were never truly supportive to begin with. In the end, the ability to say no is not just a skill, it is a form of self-respect, and an essential step toward a more fulfilling life. Seeking approval is a deeply ingrained human tendency. From an early age, people are conditioned to seek validation from parents, teachers, and peers. This desire for approval continues into adulthood, shaping decisions, behaviors, and even self-worth. While it is natural to want acceptance and recognition, relying on external validation as a measure of worth can be limiting and exhausting. The constant need for approval leads to self-doubt, anxiety, and a life dictated by the expectations of others, rather than personal values and desires. Breaking free from this cycle is essential for true self-confidence, inner peace, and the ability to live authentically. One of the main reasons people seek approval is the fear of rejection. Humans are social creatures, and belonging to a group has always been important for survival. This evolutionary instinct makes rejection feel deeply personal, as though it threatens one's very existence. However, in the modern world, rejection is not a life-threatening event but a natural part of life. Not everyone will agree, appreciate, or support every decision made. Accepting this reality is a crucial step toward independence and self-assurance. The fear of disapproval should not dictate choices, especially when those choices align with personal values and well-being. Another reason people seek approval is the belief that it leads to happiness. Compliments, likes, and praise feel good, providing a temporary boost in confidence. However, external validation is fleeting and unreliable. Basing happiness on the approval of others creates a cycle of dependency where self-worth rises and falls based on outside opinions. True confidence comes from within, not from external praise. The more a person learns to validate their own thoughts, actions, and choices, the less they need reassurance from others. A major consequence of approval-seeking behavior is the loss of authenticity. When people constantly try to please others, they often suppress their true thoughts, opinions, and desires. They say yes when they want to say no, agree when they want to disagree, and conform even when it goes against their values. Over time, this leads to frustration and a weakened sense of identity. Living for the approval of others means living according to their standards, not one's own. Authenticity requires the courage to be oneself, even if it means facing disapproval. Those who truly matter will respect honesty and individuality, while those who only value conformity are not worth impressing. Seeking approval also leads to unnecessary stress and anxiety. Worrying about what others think creates mental clutter, making it difficult to make decisions confidently. Every action is second-guessed, every word is measured, and every choice is evaluated through the lens of potential judgment. This overthinking drains energy and creates unnecessary pressure. Letting go of the need for approval brings a sense of freedom. Decisions become clearer, actions become more intentional, and life becomes less burdened by the weight of external expectations. One of the best ways to stop seeking approval is to develop self-awareness. Taking time to reflect on personal values, goals, and desires helps separate true needs from external influences. Asking questions like, "Am I doing this because I truly want to, or because I want approval?" can bring clarity. The more a person understands their motivations, the easier it becomes to make decisions based on personal fulfillment rather than external validation. It is also important to recognize that people's opinions are shaped by their own experiences, beliefs, and biases. No matter what someone does, there will always be critics. What pleases one person may upset another, making universal approval impossible. Understanding this reality makes it easier to detach from the need to satisfy everyone. Instead of trying to please the masses, focusing on living in alignment with personal values creates a deeper sense of fulfillment. Developing self-validation is another key aspect of breaking free from approval-seeking behavior. Instead of waiting for others to recognize achievements, learning to appreciate personal progress builds confidence. Setting and accomplishing personal goals, no matter how small, reinforces self-worth from within. Compliments and approval from others may be nice, but they should not be the primary source of confidence. True self-esteem comes from recognizing one's own growth, effort, and abilities. Practicing saying no without guilt is also essential. Many people seek approval by agreeing to things they do not want to do, fearing that saying no will disappoint others. However, constantly prioritizing the needs of others over personal well-being leads to resentment and burnout. Learning to set boundaries and decline requests without feeling the need to justify or apologize strengthens self-respect. Those who truly value a person will respect their decisions, while those who only seek to control or manipulate will reveal their true nature. Surrounding oneself with supportive people also plays a significant role in overcoming approval-seeking tendencies. Being around individuals who encourage authenticity rather than conformity fosters confidence. True friends and mentors support personal growth and respect individuality, allowing for honest expression without fear of judgment. Letting go of relationships that thrive on manipulation or conditional approval creates space for healthier, more fulfilling connections. At its core, the journey to stop seeking approval is about self-liberation. It is about realizing that external validation does not define worth, that rejection is not a failure, and that living authentically is far more fulfilling than constantly chasing approval. The more a person embraces their true self, the more confident and at peace they become. Approval may come and go, but self-respect, clarity, and inner strength remain constant. Letting go of the need for approval is not about ignoring others or being indifferent to feedback. It is about valuing one's own voice above the noise of external opinions. When approval is no longer a requirement for happiness, true freedom begins. Living with purpose is about aligning actions with values, making intentional choices, and striving toward meaningful goals. It is the difference between merely existing and truly living. Many people go through life on autopilot, following routines without questioning whether their actions reflect their deepest desires and beliefs. Without a clear sense of purpose, life can feel empty, directionless, and unsatisfying. However, when purpose becomes the driving force behind decisions and actions, life gains clarity, fulfillment, and a profound sense of meaning. A purposeful life is not defined by grand achievements or external success, but by the depth of intention behind everyday actions. It is not about chasing a single, fixed goal, but about continuously seeking growth and alignment with personal values. Purpose is deeply personal. It is not something imposed by society, family, or peers, but something discovered through self-reflection and experience. It is about understanding what truly matters and dedicating energy to those things. Some find purpose in their careers, others in relationships, creativity, service, or personal growth. There is no universal formula for purpose. It is unique to each individual. One of the biggest obstacles to living with purpose is distraction. Modern life is filled with noise, constant demands, obligations, and an overwhelming flow of information. Many people get caught up in what they should do, following external expectations rather than listening to their own inner voice. Society often equates success with status, wealth, or recognition, leading people to pursue goals that do not truly fulfill them. However, purpose is not about impressing others. It is about being true to oneself. It requires cutting through distractions, questioning societal norms, and focusing on what brings deep, lasting fulfillment. Self-awareness is the foundation of living with purpose. It requires honest reflection on values, passions, and aspirations. Taking time to ask deep questions: what excites me? What impact do I want to make? What do I want to be remembered for? Helps uncover what truly matters. Purpose is not something to be found externally. It is something to be realized within. Often it emerges through experiences, trial and error, and personal growth. What feels meaningful today may evolve over time, and that is natural. Purpose is a journey, not a fixed destination. Fear is another major barrier to living with purpose. Many people hesitate to pursue their true calling because of fear of failure, judgment, or uncertainty. It is easier to follow the expected path than to take risks in pursuit of something deeply meaningful. However, purpose requires courage. It means stepping outside of comfort zones, embracing challenges, and being willing to fail. Every meaningful pursuit comes with obstacles, but the rewards of living authentically far outweigh the risks. True fulfillment comes not from playing it safe, but from daring to follow one's convictions. Living with purpose also requires discipline and commitment. It is not enough to simply identify what matters. Actions must align with those values. This means setting clear goals, making conscious choices, and eliminating distractions that do not serve a meaningful path. Small, consistent steps taken every day build a purposeful life. Even the most ordinary actions, how time is spent, how relationships are nurtured, how challenges are approached, reflect purpose when done with intention. A purposeful life is built moment by moment through mindful decisions and meaningful actions. One of the greatest benefits of living with purpose is the sense of fulfillment it brings. When actions align with values, there is a deep sense of satisfaction, even in the face of difficulties. Challenges become more bearable because they are part of a meaningful journey. Motivation becomes intrinsic, not dependent on external rewards or validation. Purpose-driven individuals do not need constant external encouragement because their drive comes from within. They find joy in the process, not just in the outcome. Living with purpose also enhances relationships. When people live authentically, they attract those who share their values and aspirations. Purposeful living fosters deeper, more meaningful connections because interactions are guided by sincerity and mutual respect. Instead of superficial relationships based on convenience or societal expectations, purposeful individuals seek and nurture connections that support their growth and align with their values. Surrounding oneself with like-minded people creates a positive environment where purpose is reinforced and encouraged. Another important aspect of purpose is contribution. Living with purpose often involves making a positive impact on others, whether through kindness, service, creativity, or leadership. Purpose is not just about personal fulfillment. It is about adding value to the world in a way that feels meaningful. Even small acts of generosity, support, and encouragement contribute to a life of significance. Purposeful living is not about self-centered ambition, but about using talents, passions, and efforts to make a difference, no matter how big or small. Ultimately, living with purpose transforms life from a series of random events into a meaningful journey. It brings clarity, resilience, and a deep sense of contentment. It removes the burden of comparison, as purpose is unique to each person and does not need to fit societal expectations. It fosters a mindset of gratitude, as every experience, successes and failures alike, becomes part of a larger, meaningful path. A purposeful life is not free from challenges, but it is rich in meaning, direction, and fulfillment. By living intentionally, aligning actions with values, and embracing growth, purpose becomes not just an idea but a way of life. Living with purpose is not about having all the answers or following a predetermined path. It is about making intentional choices, staying true to personal values, and embracing each day with meaning. It is the difference between drifting through life and taking control of it. When purpose drives actions, life becomes more fulfilling, challenges become opportunities, and every moment holds significance. True contentment comes not from external success, but from knowing that each step is aligned with what truly matters. The journey of purpose is lifelong, evolving with experiences and growth. But the most important step is to begin to listen to that inner voice, to let go of distractions, and to commit to a life that is not just lived, but truly meaningful.